Hey there, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled Parent Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. Karen expects me to switch places with her and go to jail. After that, my French stepmom learns the hard way that Americans can cook. And after that, I unleashed bureaucracy on my neighbor and watched it destroy him. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen goes to jail. Please don't. I've heard what goes on in there. So please smash that like button. And if you're new, subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Karen expects me to switch places with her and go to jail. This happened a couple of weeks ago, but I'm still getting crap about it. A friend of mine, Dea, fake name, asked me if I wanted to come with her on some errands and to see her new car. I said yes because I had some things to get done and my car was being checked over. We're in the same bubble and stayed masked the whole time. Well, while we were out, Dea ended up hitting another car while turning left. We were both shaken, but mostly fine. But when I started to call the police, Dea started freaking out even more. She started begging me not to call the cops and to just go talk to the other driver. I didn't feel comfortable not calling them, so I went ahead and did it. Then Dea started begging me to get in the driver's seat, saying I had to get in the driver's seat. I had to claim I was the one driving. Turns out, Dea didn't have a license. She needed/wanted a car, but didn't feel like getting her license, so her mom bought the car for her. I didn't feel comfortable lying to the police, so I continued to refuse and just got out of the car and waited on the sidewalk for them to get there. Well, Dea got arrested for driving without a license, insurance, or registration for her car and just told me today she has been found at fault for the accident. Now, Dea, her mom, and half of our friends are saying I'm the jerk for not just switching places. She's now facing multiple fines, possible jail time, and being kicked out of her MA program because of all of this. I tried to explain that I didn't feel comfortable lying to the police, but she just keeps calling me a privileged jerk and wishing horrible things would happen to me. So, am I the jerk for not switching places with her? Edit. Several people have said I should include this, and I'm sorry I didn't in the original post. This was much more serious than a fender bender. This was my response to someone else. She took the entire front of his car off, or at least it looked like it. We were at an intersection and she was in a left turn lane with a yellow light and didn't look before she went. The other gentleman was coming the opposite way going straight. Both cars are totaled. The gentleman was not unconscious, as I originally thought, but he did hit his head on the steering wheel and he had to be taken to the hospital. He did eventually get out of his car with help, and that's when I believe I should have talked to him. Dea and I were mostly alright with just some bumps and bruises. Edit 2. Someone suggested I add this because of people saying I am the jerk for calling the police, but for major accidents such as this one where I live, you are required by law to call the police and file a report. Well, what do you think? Should OP have taken the blame for Dea or not? Please let us know. Absolutely not. Dea doesn't sound like much of a friend to me. My French stepmom learns the hard way that Americans can cook. This happened today, and my brother and I are still laughing about it. Except Gabrielle, said stepmother, and Dad, who is embarrassed. Dad came into town to visit my brother, let's call him Mark, and me for a few days and brought Gabrielle with him. Gabrielle has her good traits, but she does have this one really nasty trait. She is notoriously picky/critical when it comes to food. You know, the stereotypical snooty and rude French character in movies and books who always complains that this is not how it is done in France? She's this way when it comes to food. Going out to eat with her is embarrassing. She constantly sends back food, is insistent on food being made a certain way, and always demands things be done a certain way. One time she asked the waiter to bring some mustard to the table. Not 2 minutes later she called him back because, "The mustard is old. Bring us a new unopened bottle." More than once I've had to apologize to the waitstaff on my family's behalf and told the manager that I will vouch for them should Gabrielle leave a bad review on their site. She's made waiters and managers cry. She's that bad. Honestly, I have no idea why Dad puts up with her when she does that, even though I know he's just as embarrassed as Mark and I are. We can only chalk it up to Gabrielle having something magical about her. When they got here yesterday, for some reason, they insisted they wanted to go out to dinner. Dad recommended our new favorite diner, which is known for its breakfast at any time of the day. We live close to a major interstate, and the saying about truckers knowing all the best diners and holes in the walls in all 50 states, and then some, is true. It's a greasy spoon in every sense of the word. Right out of the 1950s, every leather booth is filled with truckers or locals, waitresses who automatically know their regulars' orders by heart and don't put up with crap from anyone. A bustling kitchen, and while spotless, is just worn enough to let you know many people have been there. In other words, it has character. It may not look like a 5-star restaurant, it has some of the best breakfast you're ever going to eat. I was hesitant to take Gabrielle there, if only because I didn't want to ruin the staff's day. Mark and I have been there enough times that the waitstaff/cooks know us. However, Dad wanted Gabrielle to experience a true American classic and was offering to pay, so off we reluctantly went. Luckily, we got there during a not really busy time, so I told Dad to find a parking spot and I would go in to get us a table. The reason I did this was so I could warn the staff about Gabrielle and apologize in advance for anything she did. Fortunately, our usual waitress, let's call her Mary, thanked me for the warning and warned the rest of the staff. We go in, get our booth, and Gabrielle tries pulling her usual stunts. I won't go into everything she did because we'll be here forever, but I'll leave a highlight reel. 1. Gabrielle sent Mary back 3 times with the coffee because, in order, it was too cold, it was too hot, and not enough cream. Finally, Mary, who doesn't let anybody push her around, just slapped the coffee pot on the table along with the cream/sugar and told Gabrielle to make do because she wasn't going back to get her darn coffee. This made Mark and me chuckle and Gabrielle steam. 2. While waiting, and probably still stewing from Mary's little comeback with the coffee, Gabrielle decided to accost Stephanie, who had just started, and tell her to get some fresh biscuits. Not ask, tell. Poor Stephanie, who is understandably anxious about her job, does as told, and then Gabrielle made a fuss about the packets of butter not being soft enough, despite Stephanie explaining that all the butter was kept cold for safety reasons. Gabrielle made a snide remark about how Stephanie couldn't wait 5 extra minutes to let the butter soften, which made Stephanie tear up, and me about ready to tell Gabrielle to go find a French chef if food was that important to her. 3. When our meals did arrive, Gabrielle was quiet during the meal, not making comments. I was unsure what was going to happen as a result. Either she really liked it, which I doubted, seeing as I've never seen her compliment anyone's cooking whenever we've gone out, or she was planning some nasty barb, which I feared. When Mary dropped off the bill, Gabrielle took it before Dad could and said she was paying. Because I was sitting next to her, Gabrielle left a big fat 0 in the tip line and left a note about, "It's cute that American chefs think they're good cooks when they've never stepped in a real kitchen before. Prove me wrong." Before closing the little book, the receipt came in and hiding it so nobody else could see what she wrote. I was upset when I read that note. I knew the chefs/servers who work at this particular diner learned their skill on the job, and if you ask me, they have every right to be as proud of their work as someone who went to culinary school would be. While I'm looking at going to culinary school myself to become a pastry chef, I respect people who have learned by working in kitchens or on the floor because they have first-hand experience. I took out $100 using the ATM at the diner and gave it to the staff as a tip, along with an apology for her behavior, embarrassed and angry. Fortunately, they didn't hold it against us, except Gabrielle, and told me that Mark and I were always welcome back. I also decided I was going to get back at Gabrielle. There was a benefit to this lockdown. During this time, bored out of our wits and wanting to better our skills, Mark and I have been binge-watching recipe and cooking how-to videos online along with practicing. And while I don't like bragging, I'd say we've become quite good. We know how to smoke our own bacon, cure corned beef, make creamy scrambled eggs, and bake flaky croissants, and that's just a sampling. When we got home, I told Mark my plan and he was grinning ear to ear. The next day, while Gabrielle and Dad still slept, Mark and I got up early and got right to work. We prepared scrambled eggs, home-cured and smoked bacon, biscuits, and a fruit salad. Dad woke up early and smelled the breakfast, waking up Gabrielle by saying that the kids were making breakfast. Dad came downstairs first, and Mark asked him to see the table. Gabrielle came down as we were finishing up and she sits down, not offering to help. While Gabrielle commented about how it smells just like a restaurant she went to in France and couldn't wait to taste everything, Mark and I served Dad and our plates before putting everything back. Gabrielle looked at us, confused. I looked at her. "Oh, I thought you were going to a French cafe for breakfast," I said. "You did write on the receipt at the diner that you thought it was cute Americans think they're good cooks if they haven't set foot in a real kitchen, and you wanted someone to prove you wrong." Dad looked at Gabrielle, his eyes wide as all the color drained from Gabrielle's face. "You wrote what?" "Well, hop to it," I said, sitting down. "Enjoy your French breakfast with your French chefs." Gabrielle's face reddened before she left. I don't know if she was embarrassed or angry, but we were able to have a nice breakfast without any of Gabrielle's complaining. She did come back after getting breakfast and has been nice and quiet all day. Hopefully she's learned her lesson and Dad grows a backbone. Speaking of French food, what's your favorite kind of food of all time? Please let us know. I could really go for some Chinese food right now. God, I love that stuff. I unleashed bureaucracy on my neighbor and watched it destroy him. This is a story of how patience is key and how letting someone else get revenge for you is by far easier than doing it yourself. The setup. I live in one of those doubled up houses where they build two houses adjacent to each other with mirrored layout, so we share a wall but are otherwise completely separate. For years, the house next to me belonged to a nice old lady who you never really noticed or had any trouble with. When she passed and the house was resold, the troubles began. The target is someone who I will refer to as Jack Sparrow, for reasons that will become clear later. Jack owns a sizable construction business, does some real estate on the side. He buys the house and rents it out to a bunch of foreign construction workers that work for his business. I say foreign because it is relevant to the story. There are rumors Jack is doing some shady stuff to have these work for him dirt cheap by claiming that they're national workers in their native country and paying them according to that wage and not the much higher minimum wage of my country. Not exactly on the up and up, possibly unreported labor as well. Anyways, he stuffs 4 to 6 of them in said house for them to live while they work here. Now, I do not have anything against construction workers or foreigners, but these guys have 2 traits that are very problematic. They are extremely loud and they do not give a hoot about anyone else. We're talking non-stop music and partying starting Thursday evening throughout the entire weekend until they leave at 5 a.m. Monday morning to go to work. Seriously, I don't know how or when they sleep. It's literally non-stop. We're talking I'm wearing headphones but still cannot hear my own sound over their loud music, since it would appear that they've designated the living room, adjacent to the shared wall, as the party room where the fun happens. At first, I do the neighborly thing and just suck it up, thinking it's just one party, just one weekend. After the 3rd one in a row, I go over to ask them to turn it down, since, night disturbance, it's technically illegal to blast music this loud, hearable on the street and across the street by my other neighbors who have also complained. I met with a half-hearted, "So sorry, we'll fix," except nothing changes. I go over several more times, each time angrier, each time met with, "But it's not loud." If I can hear your music in my own house, over my own TV and music, I would say that it is in fact too loud. I contact Jack, since he is their landlord, and explain the situation, after which I met with an abrupt, sorry, not my problem." Basically, Jack told me to get lost. So I involve police and call them every time things get out of hand. After about a dozen calls, sometimes even twice in the same night, it's clear that even regular police interference doesn't help the situation. I should mention that I am a lawyer, so I know what the next legal steps are. I also know that other than a token paper from a judge saying their music is too loud, I'm not really going to get anything. Things would, like they already sometimes had, become a cat and mouse game where they would blast their music extremely loud to upset me or wake me up for a brief few moments, so that by the time I could get proof or police to show up, there would be no music. I'm deadlocked, with my only further option being pretty useless and a waste of time. At this point, I'm biding my time and just waiting till something changes. The mistake. One day I'm at home and I notice quite a bit of ruckus next door, more so than usual. Suddenly, I see through my garden window that a wall is being partially torn down. You see, sometime over the years, the neighbor had built a small adjacent side building adjoining the main house. It was right on the border between us, and when the gardens were being re-fenced, the wall was used as a divider to save on fencing. Said wall was now in the process of having its top part ripped off by a crane. I was not informed of any of this, which, while not technically needed, would have been the nice thing to do. I go take a walk so I can take a look at what we're doing and see that they've torn down the entire side building. The remaining wall between our garden is the only part that has been kept intact, and even then, not the top part. Being a lawyer, and specifically a construction/permit lawyer, I know 2 things. Crap like this is not allowed without a pre-approved permit from the city. There's no way in heck they have said permit, as I would have seen the application for it. I regularly check to see what permits are being applied to around my area just so I can keep up with what's being built or requested in my area. This is it, the moment I've been waiting for. The situation has changed and the time has come to exact revenge. A quick email sent to the municipal authorities lets me do my civic duty of reporting a potential crime, the fact that someone is building or demolishing something without a permit. Since this is a simple report, no response happens since I'm not an official victim or anything yet. Since no further construction happens for a few days and everything was removed, I assume that was that, and they would only tear down the side structure since it was starting to fall apart due to age. Neighbors have moved all their stuff that was in said building onto their lawn and haphazardly covered it with a tarp. The next week, more construction materials are being delivered and construction starts. I send a new email to city services with new pictures saying that apparently there is more planned and that I hope they undertake the appropriate action. Instant response less than an hour later. They had called Jack after the first time to inform him that what they were doing required a permit, and he had assured them that he didn't know that. BS, he's in construction. Of course he knows, and that he would stop construction and request a permit. They called him again after my email, reprimanded him for not following his earlier promise, and he said again he would shut it down. I happened to be working from home that day and had to stop myself from waving to the construction crew as they left. Later that day, I get an angry phone call from Jack who accuses me of reporting him and that I would be sorry. He would come after me for damages for his delays. I respectfully inform him that even if I reported him, reports are in my name, but not published and anonymized in later files. I wouldn't have done anything wrong, because from the looks of it, he didn't have a permit and he should have known that before he started working illegally without one. I end the call before I start to sound too happy with things. Jack has, at this point, no idea what I have initiated with this. He is Jack Sparrow, and I have just rung the bell that awakens the Kraken that will destroy him. He just doesn't know it yet. The Kraken. You see, there's a good reason why most people consult an expert and/or a lawyer when they want to apply for a permit. The rules involved are so convoluted and needlessly complex that navigating them as a non-professional is extremely hard and time-consuming, and a single mistake can torpedo your entire case, forcing you to do it all over. I've shut down entire projects and have seen clients' projects shut down by pointing out that on page 127, section 35-1-A, something was left blank that should have been answered. I did some digging and found out that the previous owners of the house had actually consulted each other about the side building and agreed on making the wall part of the divider between their gardens, so much so that they shared the costs of it and the ownership. That wall that he destroyed part of? It was also my wall, which of course means I'm entitled to damages, but that is not the important part. The important part is that he needs my permission to do anything to that wall. So when he applied for a permit a few weeks later, added bonus, rowdy neighbor stuff is still out in the open, covered by just a tarp, since they expected this to just be a quick smash and replace job that would only take a few weeks at most. I went to City Center and looked at the application. Noticed that they were planning to do some stuff to said wall that I own 50%. So I filed a complaint. Followed proper procedure about the permit, namely that even if granted, it could never be executed, since Jack needed permission from me in regards to the wall and he didn't have it, nor was I intending to grant it. This should stop his permit, since permits cannot be granted if you know in advance they cannot be realized. No sense granting a permit to build a certain kind of house when you know they're never actually going to build it. Now, Jack was a bit of a smooth talker, and as a construction entrepreneur, had his connections, and permits are a political decision here just as much as a legal one. So, despite a 100% legal objection that should have stopped his permit, it went through. He actually called me about it to gloat a little. No worry, one can appeal a permit in my country. The only requirement is that you pay a €100 fee, which I gladly paid. The appeal instance is a subnational instance and does not care one bit about Jack's political ties or the half-hearted BS that the city officials wrote to justify granting the permit in spite of the concerns I raised. They terminate his permit without any hesitation on the aforementioned legal grounds. Jack sees his permit blocked until he fixes the issue, which he can't because I'm not really inclined to agree with his plans for our wall, you see. At this point, going through the two lengthy procedures, it's been over 7 months. The neighbors have had an unfinished construction project in their yard the entire time, forcing them to store their stuff elsewhere. Something that was always supposed to be a temporary thing for a few weeks while we build, turned into something that was taking months with no end in sight. But wait, there's more. The above was the administrative part of the matter, him getting the permit. Now, doing construction work without a permit is also a criminal offense, and of course, my report got passed around to the appropriate instances. So now Jack was also the subject of a criminal procedure for construction offenses. Not only did he risk fines and jail time, He was a construction business and used his own construction business for the work he did on the property. So his company was also on the hook, and one of the sentences that can be given in these types of crimes is to be prohibited to do construction or construction-related activity as a business, either permanently or temporarily. Not only was he personally on the line, his entire business was as well. During this debacle, Jack tried to sell the property. This didn't really go too well because of a few reasons. One, the property was inflicted with an illegal situation. The demolished side building was torn down illegally, and until illegal status was resolved, it would stick to the property, which tends to drop the property value quite a bit since nobody wants to buy something that they'll have to spend time and money on to make legal again by either rebuilding the torn down building or getting a regularization permit for it. Made even worse by the fact that he applied for said permit and had it denied, so he couldn't even claim that said permit would be super easy to get. Secondly, is Jack never intended to sell the property in its current state. What he, as I now know, has done in the past is buy cheap old houses like the one next to me. He put some of his crew in it who can't complain about the subpar accommodations. They trash the place because they don't care, and he lets them. Then when the place is done, he tears it down and sells it to a new developer or develops it himself. However, due to his construction crime and the accompanying status for the property, step 2 was not an option. He couldn't renovate it the way it needed to be. Small renovations would not be enough, because covering the crime was always a requirement in any permit he would request for the building, and because of me, he couldn't cover it. Couldn't sell it either, because the place was trashed, and any developer looking at it would dip out once they realized there was a construction issue and a vocal neighbor who would oppose anything big that they would try to do there. Lots of easier properties to develop than that one. In conclusion, anyway, that is where we are today. Jack is staring down the barrel of a criminal court procedure that is about to happen where he's risking his business and livelihood. His existing projects also gather special attention from city services now, since he is now outed to them as someone who cuts corners on permits and regulations. He cannot really sell the property unless he cuts a massive loss, since in its current state it is absolutely trashed. He cannot develop it or sell it to a developer because all development plans involve the adjoining wall, which he cannot use in big ways unless he gets my permission. The rowdy neighbors are stuck living in a smaller house than what they had, in a place they trashed, but that cannot really be renovated or fixed in the major way that it needs. They have quieted down a lot, possibly because Jack blames them for his current situation, which isn't wrong, I suppose. I have awakened the Kraken and set it off on Jack Sparrow, and it utterly ruined him. And the best part is that I had to do very little to do it. All I really did was nudge the abomination that is municipal bureaucracy and pointed in his direction, and they did the rest. I could tell you that he called me to complain and even beg about letting him use the wall the way he needs it to, so that he can get on with his business and fix the issues and use them to show his good faith in court in the criminal procedure. That he was losing money and customers over this and was in danger of losing his entire business, and that I then smugly replied with, "Not my problem." But he didn't, so for now we'll just have to imagine that he did. Have you ever had a neighbor that you just couldn't stand? If so, what was wrong with them? Please let us know. I can't stand people that play loud music. Take everything of yours out of the truck before you punch out. Backstory. Way back. I grew up in a family that when something broke, you'd usually need to fix it yourself. No reason to spend large amounts of money we didn't have to fix something $50 and a bit of elbow grease could in a few hours. So I learned from a young age to fix my car's problems by going to the local junkyard and picking parts off the recently crashed cars. Main story. I work as a ready mix driver, concrete mixer driver. I started out a few years back for a statewide ready mix company in California. I had my A-class license prior, but they essentially trained me on how to do the job. I fully love my job. Well, a few years back, the company decided that they wanted to cut costs by creating a new policy that the mechanics couldn't work on overtime. Anyone that is or knows a mechanic knows that's basically taking $400 to $500 out of their pockets each week. Over half the mechanics quit within the next 2 months. When something broke or failed on the trucks, Peterbilt 370 short hood, we had been told to write a ticket and it would be fixed as quickly as possible. After the majority of the better mechanics quit, the lazier or apprentices became the head mechanics. There were no backup trucks allowed, so if something broke, you'd basically be out of work until it was fixed. My last straw was when I brought up issues to our area head mechanic about the hopper not being able to lift and electric lock on the back chute not locking when pouring. He said he'd take a look at it and fix anything that needed fixing. The next day when I came in and talked to our batcher/manager, he told me the diagnosis was the hopper wouldn't lift because it was cement heavy, it was brand new and clean, and the chute looked fine. I could literally swing it back and forth with 200 pounds of concrete on it. I complained, and my manager told me if I didn't like how it was fixed, I could fix it myself. So I did. Not the malicious compliance part yet. So I started replacing everything that needed fixing with my own parts picked up from the local truck graveyard. You know, the one where every freeway accident truck goes to be forgotten. Over the next year, I replaced multiple bits and pieces and even a few major ones, also on my own time and dime. But the majority of the parts were $20 to $100 at a time, and when I have no work until it's fixed, it was like a requirement. Some were just to make it more of my truck. Now we get to it. I had been joking with a coworker about quitting for a better company. Just joking around, no seriousness in my voice. He eventually mentioned something along the lines of it to my manager. My manager told me day one, if I'm going to quit, just quit because I won't be given any more work. Next day I worked my shift and went in to ask for a day off in the following week. Me, hey boss. Manager, I heard you're looking to quit, OP. Me, what? I'm not looking to quit. Seriously confused. Manager, So-so said you're looking at better offers. You're looking to quit. I see no reason to give you any more work. This company is for workers that actually want to work. Me, I'm not quitting, I swear. We were just joking around. I told you day one, if you're going to quit, quit. Pack all of your stuff up from the truck before you punch out and drop the key in the front lockbox when you're finished. Seriously, I have no idea why he didn't believe me. He signs off my overtime logbook as I was already past my 8 hours before he left for the day. I was seething. I was upset. I lost my job for a stupid joke. I didn't even think about what I had intended to do until I had already removed the majority of tools and basic personal items from the truck. It was in the moment before I was about to clock out, I saw that I was only at 9 hours. I was allowed a 14 to 16 hour day with the manager's approval, which I had. It's time. Evil laugh. I first start by removing the multiple hydraulic hoses from the trucks with leather gloves because it was still hot after a long day. I removed the lug nuts, air hoses, safety clips, caps, 3 in-cab switches, the seat adjuster, the real wooden dashboard, found it in a wrecked truck, $15 win. By this point, I was around 11 hours. I kept going with my major items, new concert class Sirius XM radio and Bluetooth, chrome bumper in the front, right headlamp, full headlamp, 1 air tank that fed the chute vibrator, and water tank and both back tail light panels on the booster tires. As a last forget you, I even hammered and grinded down the patches I welded onto the drum. Well, only 2 of them along the thinnest area of the drum. With that, the truck looked like it belonged in the junkyard itself. It was unusable. Since they never reimbursed me for a single part or even asked me for the receipts, they had no claim to any of the parts I added to the truck. I was also on their clock for 15.25 hours. The manager obviously wasn't happy, left me multiple angry calls, emails, and eventually sent lawsuit papers for damages in small claims court. I brought my brother, who is a lawyer. Not really his area, but he did well enough. They laid out their claims, and I laid out the receipts and list of every single item removed from the truck that I had purchased with my own coin. The judge dismissed the case, and we immediately sued for damages and unpaid wages. They were holding my last 2 weeks hostage. We won. They were ordered to pay court fees and 2 extra weeks base pay on top of my paychecks. My brother only asked for his base rate of $300-ish an hour with 7 hours of work. Sometimes I wish I had the mental capacity to be a lawyer. I'm still driving, but for a much better company. One where if I mention something needs to get fixed, it's usually fixed by the end of the day. Well, except for the drum. I put my 4th patch on it today. I don't have the majority of the parts anymore. Mostly sold them at a truck show swap meet. I don't have a picture of the finished truck. Not that I could show it without the company colors and logo giving it away. Maybe I can find the receipts list I had. Am I the jerk for telling my stepmom she needed to move out in a few months? My dad married my stepmom 7 years ago. She's not a bad woman, and she's not a gold digger either. She and my dad are legitimately in love. However, my dad doesn't have much time left due to medical issues. He likely won't make it till summer. My dad and I weren't close. He was military, and if he wasn't gone, he was in a crappy mood. My mom was in the picture, but she wasn't a saint either, so I was raised by my grandparents in their home. Neither of my parents could tell you my birthday 3 years ago to give you an idea of it. I don't hate either of my parents, but I don't really recognize them as my parents either. My dad has been a much better dad to my stepmom's son, which is good, and I'm grateful for that. However, I don't feel a bond with my stepbrother or stepmom either. When my grandma passed, she left me her home and her will, as that was what my grandparents wanted. My dad and his wife moved in with my permission while I was away at school. It was no secret that I intended to move back and live alone in my home, which has caused some conflicts in the past. This past weekend, while I was studying, stepmom sent me an email filling me in on dad again, telling me about her layoff and asking what my plans were after this last semester. So I told her I was returning home and had a job lined up with an old friend. Stepmom asked if I felt it would be crowded there, and I reminded her that it was my home, so if anyone was uncomfortable, they would need to relocate. Stepmom pushed back a little, and I reminded her again the home was mine and that they needed to be ready to leave by summer's end, as this is my last semester and I wanted to give them plenty of time to relocate. My dad ended up calling me later and tried to guilt me. However, I reminded him that he didn't really raise me, and I was under no obligation to help them as much as I already had. I called his wife after and told her that after my dad passed, she was gone for what she had just tried to do. The summer deal was off, and I would evict after 60 days, which is still more than required. I told her my dad chose a military career over his son, and when he wasn't lacing his boots, he was yelling at me or throwing stuff. Stepmom brought her child's education into it because they couldn't afford to live in a good school district when this was over, but I told her neither he or she was my concern. I told my friends about this, and they all thought I was right because of what I've already done for them and what my dad did in the past. They have said the stepmother is just another person in the world, and it sucks for her, but you can't set yourself on fire to keep them warm. What do you guys think? Am I the jerk? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. Oh, I can't wait to hear what our audience thinks about this one. You definitely haven't seen this video yet, so please come watch it next and we'll see you when you get there. And if you join as a channel member today, we'll give you a special shout out in our next video. And to have us make any kind of video that you would like us to, just come visit us on Fiverr. Link pinned in the comments below.